be a tutorial on how to use grids in your Save the Poster design. This is our live class assignment for this week. It's not a Plex assignment. We're going to work on it together in class, but this tutorial will give you a little heads up on what a grid is used for. So, what is a grid? A grid is the foundation, the structure, and the bones of a graphic design poster. It helps the designer organize, harmonize, balance their design. And as you can see here, it's made out of horizontal rows and vertical columns. And you can organize your text and your image within these horizontal rows and vertical columns. You can take up more than one column, or you could just take up one. But generally, each different element of your design should have its own column, row, or section. For example, here at the top in this horizontal row, I could add my heading. And the heading is the biggest text on the page. You can go here to text and then add a heading. And by the way, though I'm using Canva for this tutorial, you can also use Google Slides. And so here I'm going to write my heading, and it makes it really easy on Canva because you can add a heading and the size of the text is already I'm going to put it in its own section right here. And here, in this column, I'm going to add my body text, which in graphic design is called the copy. And here I can just add the body text. And what I'm doing is pressing Enter so that the text box doesn't get too big after a certain length. So I'm just typing and pressing Enter. Let's leave that for it. And I'm going to try to put it in this column. And as you can see, it doesn't quite fit in this column. So I could leave it as it is if I want, but I think I want to make it a little smaller so that it really fits and that I'm following the grid. So I'm going to make it a little smaller. Let's say 28. You can also make it bigger and smaller by pulling the corner button. So let's put it here. It's still a little big, so I'll make it just a little bit smaller. And there, that's about where I want it, I think. I'm going to add a group of text in each of these boxes in this column. And spacing is super important in graphic design. Notice how much space I'm giving between the different pieces of information. This helps the viewer take in all the information they need without getting overwhelmed by a really busy composition. And this grid helps you measure out the space between each item. If I had grouped all my text really close together, it would have been so much harder to read. But instead, it's spaced out and easy to read. Another thing I want to do is make this headline a little bit smaller because I feel like it's a little bit too big and it's taking up a little bit too much of that row and kind of in the way of the body text. So I'm going to try 120. There. Another thing you can do is you can change the font style to match what you want. You could even make it all in capitals if you want. Now, I do need an image or some colors. And I think I want to add my image in this section here. Because what I'm doing is following the Poster Style 1 option in the graphic design unit. So Poster Style 1 right here. The headline's at the top, the body text is on the side, and the image takes up all this area here. So here I'm going to add my image. It's a little bit big, so I'm going to make it smaller and pull it to the right size. And notice how my grid accidentally disappeared when I did that. It's helpful if you have it in another page in your document so that you can put it back. But you do not have to use the grid the entire time you're designing. You can take it off and put it back on just to use as a measurement tool. Just like if you were using a ruler to measure something, you wouldn't be constantly measuring with the ruler. You would put it away and bring it back when you needed it. So that's what I could do here. I could put it away and bring it back to make sure that everything's where I want it to be. Make sure that the spacing's right between the text, and make sure that my heading isn't in the section where I want my image to be, basically anything like that. So here's another example of a poster that I made about saving the trees. It's a little bit different than this one. The image actually takes up the whole background, and I added some elements in the text. And now the text is a little bit closer together in this example, so you can see the difference and decide for yourself which that you prefer. It matters that there's this space between this section of text and this section of text to separate the two ideas a little bit. And I added a lot more space around the Save the Trees title. So that also helps create space around the text to make it easier to read. So I also added this Sign Your Petition button, pretending that this is a digital poster and that people could sign the petition online. And this Sign Our Petition button is in a really important place in the grid. You should look for places in the grid that have these intersecting lines, because that area, let me just make a highlighter here, is a good area to put your focal point, any of these lines. And it doesn't have to be exactly in the middle of these lines, but generally like in a section with intersecting lines or around those intersecting lines is a good place to put your focal point because they're visually interesting parts of the composition. So look for areas like that on the grid to put your focal point there. It could also go in the center. There's no rule saying that you shouldn't do that, but it can be a little interesting to have it a little off center and towards one of these points. Okay, so my focal point in this version is the Sign Our Petition button. And it's the most important part of my design. It's the reason why I'm making the poster, right? Is to get people to sign this petition. So that's why it's the focal point, or the first thing you want people to take note of. Another thing I did with the image is I used this triangle in the image to point the Sign Our Petition button to the Save the Trees button, and vice versa. And it visually draws a line that connects these two ideas. So that's also something you could do with your image if you made it a background. Here's another example of a poster that I made. And notice how this tree here and this circle take up all of this space in the corner. And I would say that this is the focal point of this particular poster because the tree is so detailed and it has this circle behind it which draws the eye to it. And it's not right in the center of these two intersecting points, but it takes up this whole corner and it's off center. And that way the eye can go from here to here to here and vice versa. You always want to try to draw a line between the different elements in your graphic design poster. Notice how in this example, I used green as white space. There's also white space right here, but by white space, I don't really mean the color white. I mean areas of the poster where the eye can rest, and then the eye gets drawn to the more active part of the poster. That is, the active part is the part that's different than the rest. So this area is white, which makes it different from the green area. And so therefore my eye is drawn here, and then I'm like, oh, there's a petition to sign. This is important. And then I go back and read this text here. Oops. Here's another example where the background image draws the eye from one corner to another. See this river here? It draws the eye from this area of the page to that area. And it points the viewer to read this text here. And again, the focal point is probably this take action button that I created. And you can change the heading to be uppercase or lowercase. I used lowercase for this. I thought it fit the mood of this poster better. Also, notice how I used both of these columns of text for the body text in this one. I didn't make it so small that it fits in just one area. That's also something you can do. In addition, I took up less space with the heading because I made it smaller. So I hope this was helpful. Please tell me or Ms. Silver if you have any questions about how to use a grid. And be well and creative.